The Philadelphia Eagles and Dallas Cowboys rivalry has only continued to get more interesting this offseason as multiple players involved in the rivalry have made some very bold comments and claims in recent days that have only served to get fans more excited about the battle between these two teams in the upcoming season. Now, both the Eagles and Cowboys have very high hopes for the 2023 NFL season as they are both clearly two of the best teams in the NFC and both have high hopes of securing that elusive Super Bowl title next year. But to do that, they will most likely have to go through each other, so we gotta ask the questions. What separates these two teams and who has the edge in this rivalry? Well, we're going to talk all about that in this video today, so let's not waste any time and get straight into it. The Philadelphia Eagles vs. Dallas Cowboys is arguably the best rivalry in the entire NFL, as they've had some great battles not just in recent memory but also in their long and storied history. But that's not to say that the rivalry hasn't been incredible in recent memory, as both teams have been consistently successful throughout the past handful of seasons, as both the Eagles and the Cowboys have combined to win 6 of the last 7 NFC East division titles. The only one that they didn't win was when Washington won it back in 2020, and the teams have also combined to win 8 of the last 10 division titles. But the funny thing is that neither team has repeated in that time span, as there's been no repeat NFC East division champ since 2004 when the Eagles won it 4 years in a row. Now, obviously, the Eagles are the team that won the division last year, so if you look at it from the perspective of there being no division repeat champ since 2004, then that would suggest that the Cowboys have the edge heading into next season. And it's also worth noting that the Cowboys have had a lot of recent success against the Eagles, as they are 9-5 versus Philadelphia since the 2016 season when Dak Prescott became the full-time starter, and Dak specifically hasn't lost a game versus the Eagles since 2019. However, that's not to say that the Eagles haven't had their fair share of success against the Cowboys in recent memory as well, as if you go back to 2019, the Eagles beat the Cowboys in the second to last game of the regular season when both teams were tied atop the NFC East with a record of 7-7 that effectively won the Eagles the division and sent them to the playoffs that year. And then again, obviously last year in 2022, the Eagles were able to beat the Cowboys on Sunday Night Football in Week 6. And it's also important to note that the Eagles have had a lot more team success than the Cowboys in recent memory, as since the 2016 season, again when Dak Prescott became the Cowboys' full-time starter, the Eagles have had 5 playoff appearances to the Cowboys 4, 6 playoff wins to the Cowboys 2, 2 NFC Championship appearances to 0, 2 Super Bowl appearances to 0, and of course, the Eagles have 1 Super Bowl win, as to where the Cowboys have, of course, 0. And obviously, most recently, the Eagles went to Super Bowl 57 versus the Kansas City Chiefs this year and came very close to winning it all, while the Cowboys lost in the divisional round to the San Francisco 49ers. So now, heading into this year, both teams expect to be legit contenders, and they're very confident in their chances of winning it all. Now, first, to start off with the Eagles, obviously, like I just said, they came incredibly close to winning it all last year, and they know that they have a legitimate chance of getting back in that very same spot this season. And Eagles leader Brandin recently had some very interesting comments on Jacob Sports, where he expressed a lot of confidence in the potential of this 2023 team, saying, quote, "I can see that we're building something even more special." And this is in reference to this year's team in comparison to last year's team. But the Eagles also know that to get back in that spot, they're going to have to work for it, and they're as hungry as ever to finish what they started last year. And there's been plenty of examples of members of the Eagles organization coming out and expressing this. I mean, Nick Sirianni said right after the Super Bowl that they're going to use the failure of losing the big game as motivation moving forward.
We'll overcome this too, because the type of guys that we have in there, that we'll use this to motivate us. We'll use this pain, we'll use this failure to motivate us so we can make it a strength.
And in addition, Eagles franchise quarterback Jalen Hurts had this to say after the crushing loss.
You either win or you learn. That's how I feel. I know that the only direction is to rise. And that'll be the MO going forward. That'll be the mentality going forward. That is the mentality.
And it doesn't stop there, as Eagles GM Howie Roseman had this to say in his first press conference after the Super Bowl loss.
We got a scar, we got a scar on us, and it's going to heal over time, and we're going to do everything we can, everything in our power to make sure that, we bring the city, our players, our staff, what they deserve.
And then finally, we have this legendary quote that Jalen Hurts dropped right after signing his historic contract extension.
Now you're the highest paid player in the league. I mean, how satisfying is that for you?
Yeah, I think money is nice, championships are better.
And these aren't nearly all the examples, as there were plenty of other guys that made similar comments at some point this offseason, and the Eagles have really done a fantastic job, I think, in exuding confidence, but not cockiness or arrogance during the course of the offseason, as now they obviously hope to finish what they started last year. Now for the Dallas Cowboys, they have an extreme amount of confidence as well, as they've had a very good amount of success over the past couple seasons, specifically making the playoffs in both and winning a playoff game this year versus the Buccaneers. And now this offseason, they've also gone out and made some very solid acquisitions, most notably adding Brandin Cooks to further solidify their wide receiving core, and Stephon Gilmore to help shore up their secondary, and now they're going to be looking to build on their success from the past 2 seasons, and it seems like the leader of the franchise, quarterback Dak Prescott, has the same mentality, as he recently had an interview with John Machota on Dallas Fort Worth's The Ticket, where he said, quote, "You're able to take 2 12-win seasons over into this one and build. It's the first time in my career I can say I feel like consecutive seasons are building." And then he continued on later saying, quote, "Going back to 2021, we've been able to build. We built that year and we can build again. I think that's the best real chance that you have of making it." And on top of that, Prescott made an incredibly bold claim recently. Take a listen.
Simple. We are going to win the Super Bowl, and he's trying his hardest, and you prayed on it at the beginning, so I appreciate that too. That always helps. That's always appreciated.
Now, to be fair, I don't know the exact context of this clip, and he's laughing a little bit here, so he could kind of just be joking around a little bit, but still, he said it, and I doubt that he'd say it if he didn't at least believe it a little bit. So it definitely does seem like Dak and the Cowboys have extreme confidence in what they're building this year. And overall, it just seems like both of these teams are getting ready for what they hope will be special seasons for them. But of course, to get where they want to go, these teams are going to be standing in each other's way, and one of them is going to have to prevail as the superior team and beat down the other one at some point. But who's going to have the edge? Don't worry, we're going to break that all down in just a minute, but before we do, I just ask you one favor. If you are enjoying the video and want to see others like it coming in the future, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Around 80% of the people that watch these videos are not subscribed. If you're one of those people, you've been enjoying the videos and you love the Philadelphia Eagles and the NFL, make sure you fix that right now and go down and subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss when another post goes up. I think it's a win-win situation for the both of us. And now with that being said, let's get back into the video. I would say that the general opinion among most people heading into this season is that the Eagles have the clear edge in this matchup. I mean, obviously, they were just in the Super Bowl last year, and they followed that up by having a great offseason that arguably made their roster even better, even after losing plenty of key contributors to the Super Bowl team. I mean, certainly there's no disputing how talented it is, as PFF recently ranked the Eagles roster as the most talented roster in all of football, and in addition to that, most sports books have the Eagles as the favorites to come out of the NFC, while most have Dallas at around the number 3 spot. And then furthermore, on top of that, most analysts seem to think that the Eagles are the favorites in the NFC too, and one of them, Colin Cowherd, just recently said on his show that the Eagles are clearly better than the Cowboys heading into next season.
Dallas is not nearly as good as Philadelphia on any offensive unit, and I could argue not superior on any defensive unit. That's reasonable too. Their over-under is 9.5. I'd take the under, some would take the over, but that's about what they are. And if that's what they are, not as good as Philadelphia and a 9 or a 10 win team.
Now, don't get me wrong, Cowherd has certainly been wrong many times before, as have all these analysts, so just keep that in mind. But still, it's really interesting that he feels that confidently about it, and the general opinion among all analysts, not just Cowherd, has been that the Eagles are simply the better and more talented team. But regardless of this, the Cowboys still believe that they have a very real shot at dethroning the Eagles in 2023, and Cowboys star pass rusher Demarcus Lawrence had some recent comments regarding that on AP's Pro Football Podcast.
How far do you think that gap is between Philly and where you guys are and where you finished last year? Because we know how important it is to get home field advantage.
You know, I don't feel like it's a huge gap at all. I feel like it comes down to, certain details, not just the scheme, but also your locker room. I feel like, through this time right now, when we headed the training camp, that, we make those adjustments, we learn those different things that we need to learn about our teammates so we can, fully function the way we should out there on the field.
So these comments are really interesting for multiple reasons. Now, for one, I think it's kind of funny that he did essentially admit that there is a gap between the two teams and that the Eagles are the team with the edge, which if you're a Cowboys fan, maybe you have a problem with him saying that, but then from the perspective of Eagles fans, they're saying that the gap isn't that close and that Demarcus Lawrence is completely out of line here in saying that. So I really think that it just depends on what perspective you're looking at these comments from, but if you go position by position, it's hard to argue with the fact that there is a gap between these two rosters. I mean, starting on the offensive side of the ball, I think that you have to admit that the Eagles have the better wide receiving core, as they got one of the best receiver duos in the entire NFL, if not the best, in A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, and they also have a dominant tight end in Dallas Goedert. So even with the addition of Brandin Cooks to the Cowboys, they also lost Dalton Schultz, and I really think that the Eagles just have the edge there. I also think you give the edge to the Eagles running backs, as even though the Cowboys have a very talented running back in Tony Pollard, the Eagles got 3 or 4 guys that can give you solid contributions in the backfield, all with different skill sets. And DeAndre Swift and Rashaad Penny specifically are 2 guys who I think have as much talent as Tony Pollard. It's just the fact that they haven't been able to stay healthy in recent seasons. So if they're able to do that, I think the Eagles definitely have the edge in the backfield there. On the offensive line, the Eagles probably have the edge in that category as well, as the Eagles' offensive line is widely regarded as the best unit in the league. And then defensively, the Eagles' defensive line is also better than the Cowboys, as they're also regarded as the best defensive line in the entire league. And I actually did a video recently breaking down the Eagles' defensive line, so if you want to check that out after this video, you can. But then continuing on with the defense, you also probably give the edge to the Eagles' cornerbacks, as they have probably the best cornerback duo in all of football. At least they were statistically last season in Darius and James Bradberry, and they're going to be looking to build on that this upcoming season in their second full season together. I mean, I honestly think that the only real positions you can say the Cowboys are better in are linebacker and safety, which is good for the Cowboys, but still, the Eagles have the advantage in most of the more important position groups. Now, you may notice that there's one position that I didn't mention just yet, because I wanted to save it for this next part, because I truly believe that there are 3 big things that separate the Eagles from the Cowboys heading into the 2023 season. And the first one of those things is the quarterback position, which is obviously the most important position in all of football, and it's also a position that I think the Eagles have the clear edge in. I mean, Jalen Hurts is coming off a year where he established himself as a legitimate superstar in this league, and he proved all the doubters wrong by coming out and drastically improving his game, becoming an elite pocket passer, which many said that he couldn't do, while also remaining one of the best rushing quarterbacks in the league. And Hurts really just played at an MVP caliber level the entire season, and he probably could have won the award if not for an injury late in the year, but still he finished second in the voting. And Hurts obviously also led the team to the Super Bowl, getting 2 playoff wins in the process. Remember that number because that's going to be important here in a little bit. And he did all this in just his second full season as the Eagles starter. Now for Dak Prescott, he's arguably coming off the worst year of his entire career, in which he seemingly regressed and made some awful decisions throughout the course of the 12 games that he did play, because he did end up missing 5 games early in the season with an injury. And Prescott tied the league lead for the most interceptions thrown in 2022 with Texans quarterback Davis Mills, throwing 15 interceptions on the year, and he did this despite missing those 5 games early in the year. And of course, the season ended in misery once again for the Cowboys, where they lost to the 49ers in a game that Dak Prescott only led the offense to 12 points, and that he also threw 2 interceptions in. And then we also must mention that this was Dak's 7th full season starting for the Cowboys. Maybe you can take one of those out due to injury in 2020, so let's say 6 full seasons starting for the Cowboys, and in those 6 years, he has no Super Bowl appearances, no NFC Championship game appearances, and only 2 playoff wins. The same amount of playoff wins that Jalen Hurts has accumulated in just 2 full seasons starting for the Philadelphia Eagles. Plus, Jalen Hurts has seemed to get better every single year, while Dak Prescott, although he's definitely had his moments, I find it really hard to believe that he's going to make some huge leap from his 7th to his 8th season. I mean, to me, all this screams huge advantage for the Eagles. But it doesn't end there, as the next big advantage that I think the Eagles have over the Cowboys is coaching. Now let me explain. There's one big difference in my mind between the 2 head coaches of these football teams. One is an overachiever and one is an underachiever. I think you can figure out which is which. Mike McCarthy is a guy that got to coach Aaron Rodgers in his prime for 10 years with the Green Bay Packers and only won 1 Super Bowl back in 2010, and ever since then McCarthy has had plenty of playoff struggles and came up short time and time again in the biggest moments. And now Mike McCarthy is going to be the play caller for the Cowboys after Kellen Moore departed this offseason, and I guess we'll see how that goes. McCarthy definitely wasn't bad calling plays in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, but of course, Dallas doesn't have prime Aaron Rodgers, and again, they consistently have come up short in the playoffs and when it has mattered most. Now for the Philadelphia Eagles, Nick Sirianni has been an overachiever in his short time as head coach. Heading into his first season, the team was expected to absolutely suck, as the public perception was that this team was in a clear rebuild mode. But surprise, Nick Sirianni got his guys all bought in and playing hard, and they finished the season with a record of 9-8 after a 2-5 start and made the playoffs. Then going into his second year, I think people thought that the Eagles would be a good team, but no one really had them going to the Super Bowl. But of course, that's what the Eagles did, and led by Nick Sirianni and through the dog mentality that he has preached and the culture he created, the Eagles overachieved once again, and I expect things to be no different in 2023. And then in regards to the coordinators, because I know some people are concerned about the Eagles coordinator changes they had this offseason, and I've already gone into depth on this topic in previous videos, but just real briefly here, starting with the defensive coordinator position, I think that Jonathan Gannon really held this defense back, and we're actually going to do a whole video discussing him and the whole controversial situation surrounding him and his hire with the Arizona Cardinals in the near future, so stay tuned for that. But I've said in the past that I think Sean Desai is going to be an upgrade over him, and I'm really confident in what he's going to bring to this defense. I definitely think he has the potential to get even better production out of this group than Gannon did last year. And then in regards to the offensive coordinator, while I really liked what Shane Steichen brought and I thought he was a great offensive coordinator, I also trust Brian Johnson because he's been here ever since Steichen got here, and he knows the system that Steichen ran, and he got to learn from Steichen and observed how he called plays. I think that's going to be about as seamless of a transition as we can possibly have. So overall, I'm just really not too worried about the changes of the coordinator positions, and I honestly think that people overblow that way too much because they're just trying to find reasons to say that the Eagles are going to struggle next year, when in reality they know how good this team can be. But then finally, the third huge separating factor that I think separates the Eagles from the Cowboys is that simply one team knows how to win and one doesn't. The Eagles have accomplished a lot in recent memory. They've been to the playoffs a lot. They've been to multiple NFC championship games and won. They've been to multiple Super Bowls and they won one. And they still have guys on the roster that did that. The Eagles have been in plenty of scenarios recently where they've had to come through in big moments, and they were able to do it. We saw it obviously a lot with last year's team, and even in the Super Bowl in which they lost, we saw specific moments in the game when the Eagles had to come through, specifically Jalen Hurts in the offense, and they did just that. Dallas, on the other hand, simply just hasn't been in those situations nearly as much, and when they've had the opportunities to get there and to advance farther into the playoffs and to get to conference championships, they've let it slip away and they've come up short. Now, sometimes that's what a team needs to do, is slip and fall and learn from it, but the Cowboys have done it so many times and never been able to get farther than the second round since the 90s. So in my mind, that's a huge difference. One team has a clear winning culture right now, and I'm not so sure that the other one does. And don't give me this crap about 5 Super Bowls, because they haven't even sniffed one in my lifetime. I was born in 2003. The last time the Cowboys were in an NFC championship game was 1995. That's 8 years before I even existed. So whatever winning culture they had once does not exist anymore. So now I think when you take a step back and look at this, I think it's very clear that the Eagles have the definite edge in this matchup headed into next season, and they'll now look to become back-to-back NFC East champs for the first time since 2004. But that's definitely not just going to be handed to them, as they're going to have to earn it, because Dallas is by no means a bad football team, and the matchups between these two next year are going to be amazing to watch, and who knows, maybe they see each other in the playoffs, and that would just be absolutely insane, because the hate between these two teams runs deep. The Eagles hate the Cowboys hate the Eagles, and the fans hate each other, and they get really into these matchups, and for us to get 3 of these in one season would just be insane. But like I said, I think the Eagles would be the team that has the edge to prevail in that situation. But of course, that's just the opinion of, I'll admit, a biased Eagles fan, although to be fair, I think I remained pretty unbiased throughout the course of my video and making my argument. But still, let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments below. Who do you think has the edge in this matchup heading into next season? I'd love to hear your guys' opinions on that. And also drop a like on this video if you did enjoy and want to see others like it in the future, and subscribe again so you don't miss videos like this coming in the future. And if you want to see a video talking about the Philadelphia Eagles and the extremely high goals they have for next season, Jalen Hurts getting unwarranted hate, AJ Brown, Jalen Carter, and more, you can go watch this one right here. And now with all that being said, that's pretty much all I got for this one, guys. So thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.